Today we have Ernesto Howard with us. And Ernesto, we are so excited to have you here at Veteran Voices Magazine podcast. Can you tell us about what branch you served in and how many years?
So I joined the Marine Corps, which is a department of the Navy, and I was in for almost 22 years. So I kind of round up as just short of that. But I joined at 17 and a half, and my mother actually had to sign for me to join. So.
And what was the reason why you joined the Marine Corps of all the different branches?
So there's two reasons. One was the uniform specifically. The dress blues, they look so good. And I mean, it's one of those things, sounds kind of vain, but it's sort of funny. If you look at them next to each other, I still think the Marine Corps wins in terms of uniforms. The second part was just as a service, I thought it would be the most difficult and harder one. Like boot camp was advertised as being very difficult.
Sure.
And I just kind of wanted to pick something that would be a little more challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what exactly did you do in the military, or where did you start, and then where did you finish?
I started as just a general infantryman and joining the Marine Corps, and eventually I kind of wanted to do something else, a little more challenging, to go into aviation.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very distinct pipeline I was trying to do to eventually become a pilot.
Okay.
The first step to that was to become an air traffic controller.
Really?
So I took a test to do that. I obviously passed and was able to go to the air traffic control school.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how I basically started off that segment of my career.
Wow. Okay.
Eventually, you have to be an officer in order to become a pilot.
Oh, wow.
So I knew I had to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of I continued my education. I got into a commissioning program. It's actually called MECEP, which is a Marine Enlisted Commissioning and Education Program. So very long acronyms. We love our acronyms
Right.
in the military. And it's great because it takes people who have a little bit of ambition, want to continue their education, and it's supported by your service to be able to go to college full-time as a student.
Wow. To
get your degree. And that was the next step in eventually becoming a pilot. So I took a test for an aptitude test. I had to study for it, of course, and then eventually got an aviation contract to have the chance to be a pilot. And then I ended my career successfully becoming a pilot, flying F-18s in the Marine Corps until I retired.
That's incredible. Amazing that you went from 17 and a half years old, right out of, getting out of high school, and then becoming this, pilot who's flying these amazing planes and doing that. That's incredible. So I hear that there's a story about an accident and recovery that you went through. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the accident actually happened July 12th, 2 years ago. So coming up on the second year anniversary of that. It was actually post being in the Marine Corps.
Uh-huh.
So in order to do the job that I had at the time, you had to have been a fighter pilot in a service. A lot of the guys I work with are in the Air Force. So the company I work for were adversary fighter pilots. We're basically the professional bad guys for the military.
Mm-hmm.
We train them in scenarios for which they would be fighting in a modern day war.
Mm-hmm.
So an example would be they're defending Taiwan against us. We play the part of course, the Chinese in that scenario.
Right.
We train them to that standard and they defend Taiwan, for example. That's just an example. Or more recently, the operation that happened, we would have been a part of that training scenario, for example. So you're training for all of the world examples that could potentially happen.
Sure.
Another thing we do is close air support for the Marine Corps, which is something that's like kind of near and dear to my heart as a Marine. So we provide initial training for the Marine Corps for students who are going to become air controllers and control close air support for guys on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So calling bombs in close proximity to troops is the definition of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was flying out of Cherry Point, North Carolina, and the aircraft would not take off the runway. It was a really high speed at the end and had to make a quick decision to either stick with it or get out of the aircraft.
Right.
So it was like an instantaneous thing. I knew I had to get out in order to live. And I ejected. So
my goodness.
I'll pull out the first prop. This is the ejection handle.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome that you
that I
got to keep
pulled.
it. And
Yeah.
wow.
So it's an interesting thing because you always hear about those things that military train for, or however you want to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
So this handle like lives between your legs down on the seat,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to pull it, with your hands with a little bit of force to be able to
Sure.
go out. And it initiates. You can see that cord there. Initiates a series of violent explosions to get you out of the aircraft.
Oh my
And it was
goodness.
definitely one of the most violent things I've ever been through. But as I was going through it, I was like, oh yeah, there's this explosion that happens. And then I remember being in the air, getting tossed around like a rag doll. It's more violent when you're on the ground because it senses that you need to get altitude, if that makes sense.
Yes.
There's a lot of it's a rudimentary but complicated system, if that kind of makes sense. There's a lot of explosions that happen, canopy comes off, seat comes out, your chute has to open in a certain amount of time. The bad part was I was in a not favorable part of what they call the ejection envelope. So had I been slower or had I had some altitude, it would have been a little more favorable.
Right.
So the good news is it got me out of something that I would have otherwise died in,
Sure.
if that makes sense. I remember seeing the aircraft exploding as I was out of it.
Oh my goodness.
Big fireballs like you would see in Hollywood.
Wow.
And then I kind of just remember the parachute opening, again, getting thrown around like a rag doll. The funny part of this story, which I tell people, is smoothies came into the kind that you drink.
Right.
For whatever reason, it popped into my head. I figured out later why, but I'll tell you after. So I'll keep that kind of hanging over.
Okay.
And then I remember kind of seeing the blades of grass as I was about to hit the ground. Then I kind of just vaguely remember thinking, why am I napping in this field? And then I heard the other jet that I was flying with. He had gotten airborne because he was ahead of me. And I'll step back just a second. When I knew I was going to have to get out of the aircraft, I gave him a quick call to tell him I'm number 2 in this circumstance. So
right.
I said 2 is ejecting. And or punching out. Sorry, I said 2 is punching out, which is the same thing. And he was like, "What? Say again?" Because to compute that in his head, it's like, did he just say what I think he said?
And you were still on the ground.
Yeah,
so that didn't make a lot of sense.
It didn't make a lot of sense in his mind. But as he circled back, he saw the big, huge plume of smoke. He didn't see a parachute, so in his mind, he didn't know if I had expired or what had happened. The tower didn't know what had happened, except for the huge ball of smoke as well. And so woke up, heard him kind of snap me back in place, tried to get up to walk away, see what was going on. And I realized, wait a minute, adrenaline is pumping through my veins. I need to actually lay back down. The good news is it was on a Marine Corps air station. So the paramedics were already pre-staged. They got there within probably 3 minutes of the ejection. And then ended up getting life flighted to the ECU Medical Center, so the East Carolina Medical Center.
Wow, that's quite a story.
Yeah.
So what kind of damage was done, I guess, to yourself in that? Obviously the plane
so the plane was totaled.
Right.
For me, I had a broken neck. So in all 3 of the major areas, right? The C-spine, the thoracic, the lumbar, my pelvis had broken in the back. My scapula, which is a very hard bone to break, by the way. Come to find out, part of my skull, and I'm probably missing something. Ribs, I think. Yeah, that's right. But the first thing, that sensation of can I move my toes, right? And once I knew I could move my toes, my fingers, I was kind of like, okay, I know there's probably going to be some long road to recovery, but at least I know that part is there. Not that it would have fundamentally changed the recovery, but you know what I mean? It's just small wins you can see immediately, right?
Yes.
So I did have to have one immediate surgery, which was to reattach my pelvis. So there's a very large screw that is attached to my pelvis. And it's pretty funny. It almost looks like it's photoshopped when you see the X-ray. That was the major surgery I had. The good news was not any other surgery was needed. It was mostly just about being able to stay perfectly still
Sure.
and wear braces for quite a while.
How long was that?
That was a long time. I can't even remember. It was the neck brace had to stay on for, I think it was like 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a other brace that was on my back,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to stay near horizontal. I could kind of like come up a little bit in order to be able to eat a little
Sure.
easier and do certain things. But it was a patience game
Oh,
at that point.
yes.
And then of course, how do you occupy your mind? And
Yes.
so the unfortunate part was that my wife was at that time of the accident up in Northern Virginia with her mother, who was unfortunately dying of cancer.
Oh my goodness.
So she was at her bedside in the hospital when this accident happened.
Oh, how scary.
The good part about before her mom ended up passing, we FaceTimed with each other, and she knew that I was going to be okay.
Good.
And it was really, my service really important to her. Her father was a B-17 pilot in World War II.
Oh,
so she just loved aviation.
Sure.
So anyways, my wife got to go with me for a little bit of that while her mom was being taken care of by her sisters. And then we had to set up a hospital bed in my dining room in Lynchburg. But if you can imagine, driving 6 hours from down there would have not been great.
No.
Right? So very fortunate events, and just knowing people in the right places. They got me basically an air ambulance.
Oh, that's
on
wonderful.
A flight from Greenville to Lynchburg, and then they took me in they had escorts and took me all the way home. It was amazing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I could recover in home,
yes,
without having to go through the jarring experience of having my spine jarred around. And
oh, that ride would have been yeah.
It was terrible. It would have been terrible.
Yeah, it would have. That's incredible. And so almost 2 years ago, this was the accident. And how are you doing today?
So today I'm flying again in the same aircraft. Not the same exact one.
Right, not the one that blew up, right?
Right. But it's now part-time based on starting a business. So that was actually going to the fortunate part of the recovery. I'll go back to that for a second. When I was in the hospital bed, of course,
completely
horizontal,
right?
My wife comes in and is like, now you get to work on your business you've always wanted to do full time.
Right.
So her thought was, in recovery, I'd have something to occupy my mind, which was absolutely true. And it was great. And it was a great idea. At the time, of course, I'm just kind of gritting my teeth like, okay, sounds good.
Right.
But I did, I had a great recovery. I ended up working with somebody who's here in town who actually started a business recently. Oh, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's basically, they have a hot cold plunge thing in downtown.
Oh, yes. And, I've heard of that.
Frostfire, I think is what it's called.
Yes.
Anyways, her name is Sam. She was my physical therapist, and she helped me bridge the gap from recovering and being able to walk all the way to being able to fly again. And did an amazing job.
Wow.
Here in Lynchburg.
Right.
She looked up, they're like, okay, you're a fighter pilot and we need to get you back to the cockpit. How do we do that?
Right.
So she used, grit, innovation, and really did a great job in getting me back to be able to fly again.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So that's where I am currently. I'm still flying part-time with my friends. It's a great job. I love, so it was important actually for the company for me to get back as well, because if you think of all the maintainers, that's a pretty catastrophic event. We're a very small company.
Sure.
So to see that I was able to come back, I think it was kind of a boost for everybody.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So little off topic, but tell me about your business, since you were sitting there that whole time working on it.
Well, the whole ideation for the business had come when I was actually in the Marines and being in a squadron. And when you're done flying for the day, especially on a Friday, you'll go back to what's called a heritage room in the Air Force, or in the Marine Corps, we call it a squadron bar, because it is what it is. Right. And, after this course is after business, right? So you've done your thing, you've debriefed, high five, we did good, bad, or other. And then you have a cocktail or a spirit that you enjoy. And whiskey is just an inherent part of military culture. Spirits in general, but whiskey seems to have something in aviation culture. And the things that we were drinking were just kind of like big brands. So I wanted to have a brand that was kind of for us, by us, if that makes sense. I wanted to produce a spirit brand. It was something that was good and flavorful, but also had the heritage of our aviation kind of lineage built into it.
Sure.
The DNA of a brand, right? Because it's important.
Yes.
So that was the whole thing. That's why my wife came in. I was like, start this thing. And then she actually named it. It's called Winglore Spirits.
Wow. Okay.
So wing being like obviously aviation and lore being stories.
Sure.
And we just kind of started building the brand. And the good news is we're working with a distillery up in Livingston called Virginia Distillery Company.
Okay.
And we're bottling there, and we've already done some bottlings.
Nice.
And we are about to kick off our major nationwide campaign in July.
How exciting!
Which is kind of cool.
Yes.
But the point was, this is the most exciting part to me was, I still was able to fly and do that part time because it's just something I love to do.
Sure.
But I was able to form a business that I could work for full time.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the second thing I was going to show you guys. So there's our first bottling was this.
Oh,
and
that's
you can see
beautiful.
It's got an aircraft on the front, which is an F-15 E. And it was actually a hand painting done by one of the wives of a guy who's in the squadron down at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Wow. Seymour Johnson Air Force Base is the primary contract of who I support to do the bad guy adversary stuff for. And the cool thing about them is they have been very involved in the Middle East, shooting down drones and doing a lot of really good things, protecting the ships out there and everything else. So kind of still there's a tie-in to the military.
Yes.
So we did a special bottling for them, and it's been a lot of fun. So that was our first thing. And then the second one you get to see is our custom bottle, which is coming out.
That is gorgeous.
And we designed this from basically the base of it. You can see the logo. It's got Winglore there. And there's little pieces about aviation. You can see it kind of looks like an aircraft this way and this way.
Yes.
And there's little other Easter eggs that we can talk about later. But this is our custom bottle that we're going to have. And that's the business. So it's kind of nice because I'm still going to military events as a military brand owner now.
Yes.
And we're able to capture the stories of people like, think about Sully, who landed his aircraft in the Hudson and saved all those lives. He was a F-15 pilot in the Air Force. Come to find out, if you go to Colorado at a place called, is a museum there, they basically have the glider that he flew at the Air Force Academy. And he was a very good glider pilot. Well, he basically was flying a glider that day when both engines got, right? And
yes, that's right.
You can trace these things back to military history and lineage and look back at to like what set the conditions for that. And that's kind of what we want to capture. And the thing is, it's not just about aviation, because if you think about it, if you fly in an airplane, you have a pilot up front. Yes. Chances are that they got either trained by or were in the military. So they have a tie-in.
Right.
And air support. I mean, what would we do without air support in different ways, right?
Absolutely.
Helicopters, life flights like me, being able to get off of the air station. I mean, so that's kind of what we're embracing.
That is amazing. What a beautiful story, and that you're able to start your own business and still give, homage to your to air flight and to being a fighter pilot. I mean, that's just incredible. That's wonderful. How exciting. Okay, so Michelle, would you like to ask your question?
I'm curious what advice you would give to someone who is just going in the service today. So my son is going into the Navy, leaves next month.
Wow.
So
it's amazing.
Yeah. He's planning on career. I mean, he just...
Right. And that was... So there's two different ways to think about it. It's awesome that he's thinking about a career, because I wish I would have been a little more career-minded when I would have joined. And the reason why is you should, even if you're not going to end up that direction, thinking that far ahead is important. I would have actually gotten to the cockpit a lot sooner, which turned out to be my true passion, had I been a little more career-minded. So I would say for people who are listening, to just do 4 years, maybe get that GI Bill to go to college, is a worthy goal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you should think a little bit further, right? And the second part is, it's really, if you think about organizations we join, I hear this all the time when people retire. It's about the people. It isn't necessarily about the organization. So the nice thing about the Navy and the Marine Corps and, all of the services, so many people are going to come across. Don't let one bad leader drag you down,
Mm,
right?
truth.
And
Yes.
so it's sort of, I saw people who they didn't get taken care of by good leadership sometimes,
Mhm.
and that is unfortunate, and it does happen. So it's like you got to have a little bit of perseverance and grit to just kind of get through those times. And, again, don't let that be the thing that gets you out, right? Because
Yes.
that next maybe enlistment or the next duty station,
Right.
you're going to be with a great group of people and be able to accelerate and do things. So that's, I think, the biggest advice from me.
That's great. Thank you.
That is wonderful. So, 22 years, how many moves did you make? And then what was your favorite place that you were at?
So we had about 16 moves
Wow.
total. And if you think about some of those are training, because you'll be at a place maybe 6 months. And so some of them don't count in the full respect of like trying to be able to live and immerse in a place.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite by far was Japan.
Mm.
And specifically in Iwakuni, Japan, there's a Marine Corps air station there. It's actually, the Navy is there now as well. It just was so great to experience another culture, be able to travel around Asia specifically.
Sure.
And we just really loved being a part of the Japanese culture and kind of like, again, going to baseball games where they eat ramen
Oh, how
instead
fun.
of like hot dogs and stuff
Right.
like that. Just traveling around the country, seeing something different, and you get a lot closer with the military families even, because you're away from family.
Yes.
So your primary family is always your primary family, but you get a lot closer knit because you're on the same air station or base, and you're not in the United States where you kind of diffuse into the communities you're in. And again, nothing wrong with that,
Right.
but I think it can it gives your family a better chance of maybe bonding during a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids were young the first time we went there, and then the second time they were kind of going into their teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
So two different whole experiences,
I bet.
but equally important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Were the Japanese people there very respectful or very
Absolutely.
excited to see military and be a part of that? Yeah.
For the most part, yes. I mean, there's two. I was never stationed in Okinawa, but I traveled down that way, and a little bit different dynamics. If you think about it, they're the equivalent of being like Hawaii to the United States,
Right.
if you will. So they just have a different cultural experience with the military,
Right.
that goes back to World War II, but they have a different experience with the bigger nation as well.
Right.
So maybe not as friendly, but nobody ever had problems that I was down there with, and it's just more overt protests.
Sure.
Up in mainland Japan, they definitely embraced us. We were part of the community at large. Never any problems. We really did enjoy the cultural exchanges, and it's that whole thing about people being curious about people within their own country, which is kind of what I challenge people in the United States to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have people that are hosted here, and there can be a great cultural exchange in cuisine and language and all these other amazing things.
Yes, absolutely. And how many children do you have? We didn't talk about that with your family.
I have two boys.
Okay.
So one that is about to turn 22 here in August, and the other one is 19.
Okay. Are either one of them looking into the military?
No. It's kind of a mixed bag. I never wanted to overtly pressure them.
Sure.
I didn't want them to feel like they had to do it because military service is a requirement. In my mind, this goes in that other piece of advice sometimes, right? My youngest son is really into music. That's his direction.
Right.
And so military service might sidetrack him from his ultimate destination,
sure,
if you will.
Sure.
But I also didn't want, if they did approach me about it and have a conversation, I wasn't going to discourage it.
Sure.
So I think sometimes, they had an outsized influence just by being stationed all over the place and seeing that. And so I think sometimes kids will crave something that is not a part of their upbringing and DNA.
Yes.
Not good, not bad. I knew plenty of kids who joined because they eventually got the bug from, they just did.
Right.
They weren't maybe overtly thinking about it. They turned 18. They're like, oh, I think I want to join.
Right. So. Right. And they're young, so they may look at later down the road thinking, that may be something that they're interested in. So, but yes, I agree. I think growing up in the military, you have a different perspective, or as a parent who's in the military, you have a different perspective of it. So it takes a little bit to.
Yeah. But what they did get was, in fact, right today, they're currently in Austria.
Wow.
They got the travel bug like no other. So when we set roots in Lynchburg, they're like, okay, so when are we going to travel?
Right.
Because they were used to.
Sure, yeah.
And we lived in RVs for a while as well as part of our military experience. So they're having a harder time settling down in a community than my wife and I are craving, like, let's be in a community, get to know people better.
Right. Yeah, both Michelle and I talk about that growing up with military families, is that bug of just, okay, couple years, let's go. Let's go do like something else.
Internal timer.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we're ready to go. Where's next?
Yes. But it sounds like you've made some really good, some incredible friendships and bonds because of the military, and then all over wherever you've been. So
it's been able to leverage both things because I know guys that live in almost every state. So we can show up in a place and have somebody there to host, or vice versa, right?
Yes.
But it's been kind of a different and unique experience to be settled in a place that is not overtly a military community. Overtly, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is, I met Abe Loper, for example, who is like introduced me to all kinds of people and helped me see what it's like to be a part of a thriving community.
Yes.
With local businesses.
Right. So, yeah. Abe's fabulous.
Yeah.
So yeah, he is.
Yeah. We're big fans.
Yeah. Big fans. Any other questions?
I do actually have another question. Where can people purchase your?
Oh yeah. Guess that'd be important.
That would be important. Yes.
Let's talk about your business, because we also have the Veteran Appreciation Expo in August at the American Legion. So we host that with Hill City Warriors and Amanda Kid Insurance. This is our second year doing it, but it is to kind of highlight the veteran businesses in our area, the businesses, the organizations that support veterans, that offer specific services to veterans, or just businesses that offer discounts to veterans. We want to be able to kind of put all those resources in one place, and so they're easily found. And so, that's an opportunity for you. Also, it's like $20 for a table for a veteran-owned business. But aside from that, where can people purchase your these bottles? Because I want one.
So the cool thing there's like, alcohol is such a weird industry to begin with. Distilled spirits is even more complicated because if you think about it, there's literally 2 constitutional amendments that have to deal with alcohol. One was the prohibition and one was turning it back on, right? And then of course state laws and all other stuff. So we're going to have a direct to consumer line of operations, which is literally website based, and it's warehoused and can be delivered to your doorstep.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool, right? I mean, if you think about kind of being able to get Amazon and groceries and all those other ways, that's one of the unique things now that the laws have allowed.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of nice because we're a premium based brand, so that's very helpful to us. But of course, since we're based in Virginia, we want to have retail here as well. So there are a couple of shops that'll be turned on. I will tell you, the one that will be more immediate is you'll be able to get at the Virginia Distillery Company, which is an actual ABC store. They have the ability to be able to sell as an ABC store. And since we're bottling there, we're going to work with them to be able to be available there. So that'll be the first true Virginia location, but you can anticipate that we're going to be close to the other bases. So I'm thinking of Oceana and Hampton Roads near the Langley, near Quantico. We want to be able to be near the places where we have a lot of synergy.
Yes.
But the good news is we want to be available to the general population. Since I live here in Lynchburg, you can be sure that it'll be at one of the ABC stores here as well. So that will be a bigger announcement probably within the next week or two.
Okay.
The one thing we are waiting on is our custom glass, which is, I just got videos today of it being made. They're going to advance ship mini cases to us to be able to bottle within the next week and a half. So I have these available now.
So exciting.
Which, since you guys are friends of Abe, it's easy to do that through me, just as retail to retail or retail to customer type of person. But to the general population, it'll be available in the next 2 weeks.
And so what would the website be?
It's winglorespirits.com.
Okay.
And the nice thing, there's going to be 2 expressions. There's going to be a bourbon. We call it bogey dope bourbon. Bogey dope is a call we make as a pilot to know where the closest enemy is when we're kind of just
Oh,
in the middle of things.
okay.
We say bogey dope, and they tell us it's this direction.
Uh-huh.
So that's the bourbon. And then Nickel on the Grass is the American single malt, which is a new protected category in the United States as of January 19th of this year. So if we think about tequila is protected because it's a Mexican product,
Mm-hmm.
Guadalajara, right? Bourbon is a protected U.S. category. American single malt is now a protected category.
Wow, that's
And that is
incredible.
what is made up in Virginia Distillery, and then we're bottling there, of course. So those are the two expressions. And Nickel on the Grass is a way of paying tribute. So like if a pilot who dies, we would say Nickel on the Grass, and or just nickel. It's kind of like a way of giving homage to somebody. It could also be kind of like break a leg. Sometimes you can kind of use it that way. But a lot of history in that particular name. But yeah.
I love that it's all connected, that you've really put so much thought and preparation into everything from the glass to the name to every little detail. That's
I appreciate
incredible. Yeah, that's incredible.